Hold on for a moment, my friends, and really think about this. What if the greatest discoveries in human history were never meant for us to find? What if entire chapters of human knowledge were deliberately erased, not by accident, not by time, but by design? Ask yourself this: why do so many ancient civilizations rise to incredible heights and then vanish almost overnight? Why do libraries burn, records disappear, and inventions show up centuries before they should exist? And here's the real question nobody likes to ask: who decided what humanity was allowed to remember and what had to be forgotten? Tonight, we're stepping into forbidden territory. Knowledge that history tried to erase, ideas that were considered too powerful, too disruptive, too dangerous to survive. And once you hear what our ancestors may have known, you'll never look at history the same way again. Let's rewind the clock, way back. Long before modern science, long before computers and satellites, ancient civilizations were doing things that still puzzle experts today. The Sumerians, the Egyptians, the Indus Valley people, the Maya. These weren't primitive societies scratching in the dirt. They tracked the stars. They built massive structures with surgical precision. They understood mathematics, medicine, and astronomy at levels that shouldn't have been possible for their time. So here's the uncomfortable question: where did that knowledge come from? Because knowledge doesn't just disappear on its own. Take ancient Egypt. The pyramids align with celestial bodies so accurately that modern engineers still argue about how it was done. No heavy machinery, no modern tools, yet precision that rivals today's technology. Were these just clever builders, or were they using knowledge that has since been lost or erased? And if it was erased, who made that decision? Throughout history, one pattern keeps repeating. Libraries burn, scrolls vanish, teachers are silenced. The most famous example? The Library of Alexandria. Some estimate it held hundreds of thousands of texts: mathematics, medicine, engineering, astronomy, philosophy, knowledge collected from across the ancient world. And then, it was gone. Not in one accident, not in one fire, but over time, systematically destroyed. Ask yourself this: how does humanity allow its greatest storehouse of knowledge to vanish without anyone being held responsible? Because once knowledge is gone, power shifts. When you control information, you control people. And that's when knowledge becomes dangerous. Here's something history books don't like to talk about. Most knowledge wasn't destroyed because it was useless, it was destroyed because it challenged authority. Ancient medical texts that taught people how to heal themselves, astronomical records that questioned religious control, engineering knowledge that could free societies from dependency. If people know too much, they stop being easy to control. So rulers, priests, and elites made choices. Some knowledge was locked away, some rewritten, and some erased completely. Not because it was false, but because it was too true. Let me ask you something personal. If today someone discovered technology that could end dependence on oil, or medicine that made people far less dependent on systems of control, do you really believe it would be shared freely? Or would it quietly disappear, just like ancient knowledge did? Because history doesn't repeat itself by accident. It repeats because human nature doesn't change. And that brings us to the most disturbing idea of all. What if fragments of this forbidden knowledge are still out there, hidden in symbols, buried under ruins, waiting to be rediscovered? Let's talk about books that survived, barely. Across history, certain texts were labeled dangerous, heretical, or simply forbidden. Not because they were nonsense, but because they made people think. Think about that for a moment. When knowledge threatens power, the first response isn't debate, it's suppression. Ancient medical texts that taught people how to heal themselves,
astronomical records that questioned religious control, engineering knowledge that could free societies from dependency. If people know too much, they stop being easy to control. So rulers, priests, and elites made choices. Some knowledge was locked away, some rewritten, and some erased completely. Not because it was false, but because it was too true.
Let me ask you something personal. If today, someone discovered technology that could end dependence on oil, or medicine that made people far less dependent on systems of control, do you really believe it would be shared freely? Or would it quietly disappear, just like ancient knowledge did? Because history doesn't repeat itself by accident. It repeats because human nature doesn't change. And that brings us to the most disturbing idea of all. What if fragments of this forbidden knowledge are still out there, hidden in symbols, buried under ruins, waiting to be rediscovered? Let's talk about books that survived. Barely. Across history, certain texts were labeled dangerous, heretical, or simply forbidden, not because they were nonsense, but because they made people think. Think about that for a moment. When knowledge threatens power, the first response isn't debate, it's suppression. Ancient manuscripts spoke of advanced mathematics, healing practices, and even ideas about the universe that clashed with official beliefs. Some books vanished entirely. Others were rewritten, edited, or locked away where only a select few could see them. Ask yourself this question. If knowledge truly didn't matter, why go to such extreme lengths to destroy it? Here's where things get really interesting. Not all knowledge was burned. Some of it was hidden in plain sight. Ancient symbols, sacred geometry, cryptic diagrams. To the untrained eye, they look like art or decoration, but to those who understood them, they were instruction manuals. Manuals for building, for healing, for understanding the heavens. Symbols were used because words were too risky. A book can be burned, a symbol can survive for thousands of years, and many did. Now let's talk about something that really rattles modern historians: ancient technology. Devices and mechanisms discovered in shipwrecks and ruins that simply should not exist according to mainstream timelines. Precision gears, astronomical calculators, engineering solutions far ahead of their supposed time. These weren't accidents, they were the result of deep understanding. But once again, knowledge like this creates imbalance. If ordinary people gain advanced tools, control slips away. So knowledge disappears, not overnight, but quietly. Ancient civilizations knew the human body in ways that still surprise modern science. Herbal medicines, surgical techniques, natural treatments that worked without dependence. Some of these methods are only now being rediscovered. So ask yourself, why would effective healing knowledge ever be abandoned, unless it made people too independent? Healthy people don't fear easily. They don't rely as much on authority, and that makes knowledge dangerous. This is the uncomfortable truth. History isn't written by time, it's written by people, and people have agendas. Rulers, institutions, gatekeepers of information. They decide what's preserved and what quietly disappears, and every erased idea reshapes the future. Fast forward to today. Satellite imaging reveals ancient cities buried under jungles. Archaeology uncovers structures older than we were told possible. And slowly, pieces of lost knowledge are coming back. Not because history wanted them to, but because curiosity refuses to die. Every discovery raises new questions, and questions are powerful. Here's a question worth asking. Are we doing the same thing today? Suppressing ideas, labeling knowledge as dangerous, deciding what people are ready to know. History warns us what happens when curiosity is controlled. Civilizations stagnate, progress slows, truth suffers. Forbidden knowledge wasn't just about science or technology. It was about freedom, the freedom to think, to question, to live without fear. That's why it was erased. Not because humanity wasn't capable, but because it was. So let me leave you with this thought. What we call lost history may not be lost at all. It may simply be waiting. Waiting for minds willing to question. Waiting for people who aren't afraid of the truth. Because knowledge is only dangerous to those who fear losing control. And maybe, just maybe, the greatest discoveries are still ahead of us, if we're brave enough to look. If this made you think, stay with me. More forgotten truths, more lost knowledge, more mysteries history tried to erase. Subscribe, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next one.